Hello, 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 everybody. It's been a minute. Guess who? My name is Amanda Calendar, and this is the More Sugar Podcast. I am back from an unexpected but due hiatus. Right after the coping with the loss of a mother, well, before I finish, if you're watching this, I have all this gear, and I call it gear. I have a new camera and I'm using headphones because it makes the sound a little better. So I feel really like official. But anyway, unexpected hiatus was due to I turned 49. And when I turned 49, it made me start to think about my life going into 50. And going into 50, for me, milestone birthdays should always include some type of self-reflection and thought to where you are, where you've been, and how you can be a better person. And so, right after the Coping with the Loss of the Mother series, I began to ponder that. And with that, I decided to do a series where I asked three people who they are. It's three or four, I'm not sure. I took three or four of my friends and I was going to start a series. I even think I advertised it, and it was going to be about who are you? And I had very specific questions for everyone. And in the time of preparing for that, I started to read those questions, and I realized, again, everything is about self reflection for me. Walking into 50, I'll be 50 next year. So everything is about self reflection. Like even like why am I eating this particular piece of candy? So if I seen, I'm not even gonna say excuse me. That's just the space that I'm in now. So if you notice, and as I'm going over those questions before I begin the podcast series, I started to ask myself, like, how would you answer some of these questions? And so I wouldn't say pulled the plug. God, like things happen for a reason. Schedules was conflicting. Um, it was technical difficulties. I even recorded a whole episode with one guest and she just didn't like it. And so I scrapped it. And I could understand her point because after she went back, she's not even turning 50, but she said, Mandy, I'm not comfortable with that recording. I said, why? It was great. She was like, because at the end of the day, I never was able to answer your question. It felt like I was just rambling. And even though I thought it was good content, she just didn't feel comfortable with it. So we scrapped it. And so that led me down the rabbit hole of my own journey. Like, who am I? And of course, for me, everything is a struggle with authenticity. I always want to stay true to myself, and not get lost in this world of show and tell and social media. And that was really the point of the podcast, was to have conversations from my book, Sugar My Grits, Grief to Gratitude Through Grace. And behind the scenes, there are a number of conversations that I was having, and I just wanted to bring them to the forefront. So before I get into another series, I just want to do I just wanted to do a check-in with myself to see where I was. And again, as usual, like I said, I'm struggling with authenticity to stay true to who I am in my professional life, as a parent, as a spouse, and spiritually. And sometimes staying true to yourself is kind of just hanging on to what you know, but sometimes it's time to change that person. Like I'm about to be 50, so there's no way I can be the same 40-year-old Mandy. I can't be the same 50-year-old person that I was at 40. And that's my struggle. Sometimes change is a struggle because I think change means that I'm not being true to myself, when that's the furthest thing from the truth. So my first struggle that I wanted to talk about that I was dealing with was parenting. and breaking generational curses. Now, everyone goes around throwing that term around so loosely, like everyone's claiming to be doing the work of breaking generational curses, and they're not. They're not. You don't wake up on time and be a good parent. That's just a fraction of breaking the generational curse. There's so much work that goes involved that's involved in that. I don't think people understand. It goes. The key word is generation. So you don't just have to, fix yourself. You got to dive back into previous generations to understand that trauma and heal the trauma that it caused for you, and not to pass it to your children. And what I struggle with is what God did. I took notes, y'all, because I'm a great writer, but I'm not. I'm working on being a better speaker. And this is something that I could have easily wrote in the post, but I wanted to talk about it so you guys could hear the struggle in my voice and hear the insecurity, because I struggle with all those things. I wanted to be sure that it's heard. God took everything good and bad about me and put it in my son. And that is the beautifulest, I don't know, if that's a word, the beautifulest, the most beautiful, scariest thing about parenting. And for me, I am being stretched, y'all. Yeah, the stories I tell about Jax on social media are all true. Jack's calendar constantly dances on a line of self-expression and me clenching my teeth. Boy, if you don't, I'm a cross between, what do they call it, gentle parenting and Bernie Mac. And I say all that to say is my mother. Look, I'm great. I turned out wonderful. I think. I think I did work on myself to be wonderful, right? And my mother parented me, and she did the best that she could, and there was nothing wrong with that. I just don't want to be the mother that my mother was. I want. I feared my mother more than I respected her, because I knew what would happen if I didn't listen. And a lot of times it was spankings. I mean, I didn't get like mommy dearest, no wire hangers, beatings, but I was what we considered for that era normal. That's what happened if we didn't listen. There was really no conversation. But I learned at an early age. I had two older sisters, and so I learned at an early age that if I see them, if it doesn't work for you, then it's definitely not gonna work for me. So I know not to do the dumb shit that you just did. So that kind of kept me in line. The trouble that I knew my sisters, these headphones are just killing me, but it makes it sound better. Like the trouble that I knew my sisters would get into, I wouldn't get into. And so what made me want to talk about that was two instances that I want to share that happened of me teaching my son lessons. Work for me has lately been allowing me, unfortunately, the unfortunate part is I travel sometimes, so it keeps me away from my family. But the fortunate part is when I'm home, it reminds me to intentionally spend time with Jax. We do things just he and I intentionally. And so one of the things recently that we did together was he wants to learn how to play basketball. I can't play basketball. So I recruited my nephew. He played college basketball at Division I. And so sometimes you're not always in the mood to teach a lesson to your kid. I know there's lessons to be taught, but everything I do, I don't want to be teaching a lesson. I just want to have fun. I just want to go to the basketball court and play basketball and, come home. So my nephew, I called him. He said, "Yeah, no, don't worry about it. I got a little cuz. I'm gonna meet you at the basketball court. Let's say at 6 o'clock." So me and Jax go over to the basketball court at 6 o'clock. Now I told him that his cousin was coming to teach him because I wasn't very good at it. And at the basketball court, there's a playground. And so 6:15 rolled around, so he said, "Mommy, while we're waiting for cousin Kenyatta to come, let's go play, run around the playground." So that's another thing about being 50. I'm struggling with losing weight. I had a kid at a later age, and so I need to be agile. I need to be able to run. I need to be able to jump. I need to be able to play, and so I need to lose weight. And that's another struggle in finding, in discovering who am I. I need to. I'm gonna talk about that too. And so, we're on the playground and I'm running up and down the sliding boards, the monkey bars. We're playing tag, everything. And then when I noticed, it was about 6:30, and so I'm texting, my wife, and I'm like, he's asking me questions about where my nephew is, and my thing is I didn't want him to be disappointed in case he didn't show up, and so in that moment I have to come up with how can this be a teachable moment. And so he was already aggravated that I'm texting on my phone when I'm supposed to be playing. He has no idea that I'm in the background with my wife trying to protect him from a hard lesson in case he doesn't show and his feelings being hurt. How can I make this a teachable moment? And by now, it's time is ticking in at 6:40. So we done played, and when he's had enough of playing, he's like, "Mommy, where is he? Why is he coming?" And we're sitting there, and I'm looking around, and it's getting a little dark, and my feelings are hurt. I'm getting angry, and I had to put all that away to put it into a lesson, because right now is where his opinions will be formed on disappointment, right? And so I said to him, I said, "Son, of course, my wife is over my phone doing the quarterbacking, most of it, but I still have to form the words and look into his eyes." And I said to him, I said, "Son, what keeping your word is and being honorable." He says, "Yes, mommy." And I says, "So unfortunately, there's going to be times when people don't keep their word." And he's like, "Well, why would someone not keep their word, mommy?" And I said, "I don't know, son, but I just don't want you to be that person." Okay, I said, "If you tell someone you're going to do it, always do everything that you say you're going to do. Do you understand?" And he was like, "Yes, mommy." And then we were talking, and what hurt my feet, he put his head down, and his head was like, y'all know that drop, the head drop kids do when they drop their heads. And I'm like, "Oh man." And so I say to him, and immediately I wanted to cry because I think he knew where I was going. And I said, "Cousin Kiyo might not show up, but I don't want you to get disappointed in case he doesn't." And he was like, "Okay, mommy." And I'm like, just remember, always, always, always keep your word. And he's like, "Okay." And the whole time we're having this conversation, he got his head down. And all of a sudden, I remember something my brother Irvin said. My brother Irvin I heard him always say to his sons, "Hold your head up." And I said to him, I grabbed his chin and I said, "You know what Uncle Irvin would say?" I said, "Hold your head up, son. It's okay to be disappointed, but hold your head up." And he's like, "Okay, mommy." And time's ticking. And so I said a couple of things I can't remember, but it was just kind of to get him out of his feelings. And Jax is the kind of kid, he needs to know why. And he just did not understand why. And I'm like, man, I couldn't understand why. I couldn't explain to him the reason why. And so, I'm like, no worries. I could do the best I can, to shoot. And, as soon as we get ready to walk away from the court, I look up and I see the Audi headlights pull up, and my nephew, he pulled up. He was late, but he showed up, and the smile on my son's face was incredible. But that was just parenting in the moment. Like, when you gotta pull something from somewhere, to keep your kids from developing a complex. I was able to do that with the help of my wife, with the help of things I've read, and just knowing that no one ever did that for me. No one ever explained to me disappointment, or sometimes people don't mean it. I just had to internalize that and figure out those feelings. And I just don't want my son to have to figure things out on his own. And that's where, for me, gentle parenting comes in. And there's another instance that was recently where we were at my sister's house and we were at a cookout. And I knew when we went to the cookout, Jax doesn't. He's the only child, so he plays by himself well a lot. But there wasn't any kids there, so he wanted to play with. He brought his Legos, and for some reason, my sister wouldn't let him play with the Legos, and so he cried, and so I had to talk him through his emotions. And she walks by and she's like, "Why?" And she was like, "Mommy would never." And I said, "I'm not mommy, right?" What is so bad about having a conversation with your child? I said, I was afraid of my mother. So imagine me yelling at him in that moment. "Why are you crying? Shut your mouth. You can't play with the Legos, and that's the end of that." And I snatch the Legos, I throw them in the trunk of the car and make him sit there. No, that's not what we doing. That's not gonna be Jack's calendar life. I let him cry. And I talked him through his emotions as he was crying. I didn't tell him, "Stop crying, wipe your face." I talked to him long enough where he was able to get control of his emotions, where he was comfortable in what I was telling him with his feelings in order to stop crying. Yep, it took a minute. It took a minute. But he was in a better mood. He understood, and he didn't walk away with any trauma. Now that is what we call breaking a generational curse. Because I had to do two things. I had to step away from how I was raised and then basically get into a semi-disagreement with my sister in the middle of a cookout. My sister's older than me. She's protective. She thinks she knows everything. And she's a bit of a bully. And so we gotta stand up for our children against anybody, right? That's breaking generational curses, and that's difficult. And when we got in the car and we were leaving, Kayla looked at me and she was like, "Wow." I'm like, "What?" She was like, "Normally you kind of let your sister say what she want." I'm like, "Yeah, because normally it's not about my son, right? You can say what you want to say. We could have all the disagreements in the world. I never argued back with my sisters because they're argumentative and I'm not. I don't want to get into a disagreement. I'm not confrontational, but not when it comes to Jack's Delano calendar. Even with my wife, him and my wife gets into it sometimes. And when I say he has things about me that I don't like, he's inherited calendar anger. Calendar anger. We put him in jujitsu as a way to get rid of some of that energy. And when I say energy, it's not just like energy that he won't keep still. Anger is a form of energy. When I say he's angry if he can't get his way. He's angry if he's trying to put something to a Lego or something together and it won't work. And he's short tempered. I would say that he has a short temper. He's a happy child. He's a very happy child, but he has a short temper. I'll say that rather than angry. He has a short temper. And so I'm trying to work with him with his temper. There was one instance, and I'm giving y'all real instances because this is my life. Like, this isn't any case studies that I read in the book. These are things that I'm dealing with so that y'all know it's real. That's why I always try to tell real stories. So I hate to listen to podcasts or read a book or things that's unrelatable. I'm just telling y'all things that Amanda's going through as a person, As me and my wife going through as a marriage, and things I'm going through as a parent, as an employee, and things I go through spiritually and just as a human being, so people understand that you're not the only one and that you can get through it. There was this one instance, an example. He has all these projects that he was doing, and my wife was hot glue gunning something for him, and I was in the shower. And whatever transpired, I just knew that he was mad at her. He was mad at my wife because she didn't do his way. And when Jax is mean, Jax will say, you know what, forget about it. Or he'll say slick stuff that make you want to go in his mouth. Like, boop. And so he must have said something slick to my wife out of anger. And she told him, I think she said to him, excuse me, I'm not sure she said to him that she wasn't helping him anymore. Or I didn't hear the whole thing because, again, I'm in the shower. But I said, let me cut this short because I hear them going at it. And as I turn the water off, I just hear him outside. And I could tell he was looking for me because the argument was getting closer and closer to the bathroom door. And I'm like, why am I even? So I got out of the shower, and there I am trying to dry off, and I hear him outside the door. By now he's bawling, crying. And I trust my wife with my life and the life of our son, or I wouldn't have had a son with her. But if my son is bawling, crying, I'm gonna step outside the door to see what's going on. And so I open the door and I wrap the towel around in front of me, and I'm like, bro, and I'm like, son, I'm like, what's happening? He's just crying his eyes out, crying, and I'm like, and Kayla's over on the side of the room, trying to explain to me what's going on, and I'm like, son, what is the matter? And I said, get yourself together. And he's telling me that he said something to mommy out of anger. And now she won't help him. And he's just like, his face is turning red. And he's just like, I could see the rage like running through his body. He just had nowhere to put it. He couldn't control it. And so I grabbed him. The first thing I did is I grabbed him and I held him and I hugged him. And he put his head in my chest and he's like weeping, crying, simply because he had nowhere to put that. Now imagine a parent who hasn't done the work that I've done. If that had been my mother, she would have got out the shower and beat my behind for whatever reason. But in that 5 minutes, I just let him hold me, and he squeezed me so tight, and I just let him cry it out. And the moment in that, like, my wife could have been offended, like, oh, you taking no, because we understand what we have to help him work through. And Jackson's the type of kid, he touched a fire. Don't touch the fire, son, that's hot. He touched the fire. Mommy, it's hot, I told you. So he has to learn things, unfortunately, in extreme. For example, when he was taking swimming lessons, I would repeatedly tell him, son, don't play in the water. The water is not the place to play. Josh constantly played in the water. Son, don't play in the water. The water is not the place to play. Okay. What I do? I said, you had a little cousin named Kendall that drowned. Changed his whole mindset around water and playing in the water. Kendall didn't drown because he was playing in the water. But I want Jax to understand how serious it is when you don't pay attention in the water. So that was extreme, that he had to learn that. And there was another extreme, we had to learn something, but that's something for another podcast. And so immediately in my mind, I said to him, I said, son, I don't want to always teach you in extremes. I always want you to get the lesson the first time because I don't want you to have a mental block about these extremes. You gotta keep working through it. And so I said, and immediately I thought about my cousin I did, and her being murdered by a man that could not control his anger. And I said to him, he knows Kimani's mother is not alive. I never told him. I don't remember telling him the situation. But I said to him, I said, son, there's consequences for men that can't control their anger. So we're gonna work with you with that. And so that's just, a little bit of what breaking generational curses is. Generational curses isn't like I don't know what y'all think it is, reading a couple of scriptures and posting them. Generational curses is doing the work. And everyone isn't not dealing with the same challenges, nor does everyone have the same resources to deal with these challenges. We are all trying to heal from something, and it's not just grief. We're trying to heal from divorce. We're trying to heal from job loss. We're trying to heal from dissolved friendships. And I go through all of those things as well. I mean, I'm not divorced, but working on a marriage is a job, and life be life, and whatever that term means. I don't think that is necessarily a bad term. I just think that when I say it, I'm trying to convey the point that I'm at a point in life where some unknown variables have entered the chat, and I'm trying to figure it out while still living. That's what I mean by life be life, and like Jay-Z said, I was gonna get right back, but I have to deal with shit, man. And I'm just trying to get through. We gotta give people grace. Be kind. I just had to stop what I was saying to make that point. We have to have the ability to transform our pain into some type of beauty. If there could be any takeaway from this podcast, well, I felt like I was rambling. I just wanted to play a little catch up. We have to have the ability to transform our pain into beauty. Give grace. Be kind. And stop asking people if they need anything. Because if you're asking somebody if they need anything, that means you notice something. Go ahead and do it. You need me to come through? Stop asking. Just pull up. Worst case scenario, they're not home. At this juncture in life, everyone should have everyone's Cash App, Zelle, Venmo. If you think your friend's struggling with something and you got extra, drop something in their Cash App without even asking, because people don't be wanting to ask. And I noticed that about my son. I said that to my wife today. His aunties always tell him to give him anything he wants after me and my wife have asked, right? And he has all the numbers in his iPad, but my son will not ask his aunts for anything when he can get everything. And I think he picked that up from me. And that's not a good thing, because you got to ask for help if you want it. And I struggle with that. And that's something, again, I said, God put everything from me that's good and bad. Your kids, you might good little, he looks just like people when the kids are born, oh my God, he looks just like me, he's so handsome. She's so pretty. What about them other traits that we can't see? What about them demons? That pretty baby, you got to protect that pretty baby from them demons that they going to inherit. Okay? Man, and we're going to go through the four growth journeys for me constantly: spiritual, emotional, financial, and physical, right? So I think, and for me, my journeys don't have stopping points. I'm always growing emotionally. I'm always growing financially, thinking of other ways to make income, thinking of other ways to create a legacy. For me, it's just about income, because somebody could go get 3 jobs and you have income. Life is about more than income to me. It's about financial security, right? So in case you want to take a break, the money's there. And I learned that from watching people, financial security. I learned that from reading books. I learned that from a feeling. I learned that from being broke. I learned that from having to borrow money, right? So I learn as I go, and I try to dispense the information. So hopefully you won't have to go through that. That's another Jay-Z. Hopefully I did it. So hopefully you won't have to go through that. And spiritual is one of the 5 pillars, the 5 things that we go through. That's definitely constant. Like sometimes you might reach a financial goal, but you'll never reach a spiritual goal because the devil is always working. So I figure, in my opinion, we constantly have to up our spiritual game or keep on top of. The devil's like new rap. You got you got to stay on top of new rap simply because I have nieces and nephews in their 20s. So I got to understand what they're listening to, what they're going through, and why they feel this way. That's how I feel about the devil. He's always thinking of new ways to trap you. So you always got to think of new ways to stay away from him or to recognize him. That's one thing. That's one thing people have trouble is recognizing the devil or darkness. I ain't gonna blame it on devil. Just sometimes it's just dark energy. You have a hard time. And what I'm struggling with right now the most is the physical. And before I end the podcast, I'm gonna say that I wasn't overweight all my life. I just got to a point, and people always call it happy weight. There's no such thing as happy weight. You just lazy, right? You laid up with somebody you just met and you happy, so you don't want to get your ass up and go for a walk. That's lazy. You pay if I pay $50 for a meal, I'm gonna eat all of it, right? And that's what I have to stop doing. I just had a physical not too long ago, and the doctor was like, "Yeah, your cholesterol high." I was like, "Okay, I've heard that before." No, go get this prescription from CVS. Well, oh shit, that's different. And so I'm walking now, but it's more. You can't walk or work out and then I'm talking to myself right now. I'm not pointing the fingers at nobody. You can't walk or run or work out and then come home and have 3 cocktails or steak dinner. So much has to change. And that's was where I struggle at. I struggle with food because my job is physical. I'm a field service technician. I have to take test equipment, in and out of the hospitals. Sometimes I've required calibration of a scale and I need 300 pounds. So sometimes when I have to fix things, I carry 300 pounds in my car. That's 6 50-pound weights, right? So I'm working out, I'm moving, but then I go to the drive-thru for lunch. And sometimes we don't realize that that's killing us until the doctor tell you to pick up that prescription. And then I don't want it to be too late. And not necessarily, I don't want it to be too late for my son. He's going to be 8. I'm 49. He's going to be 8. He still has his teen years to go through, and I can't keep up with him like this. So that's what I'm struggling with. I'm a snacker. But other day, instead of buying chips, I bought some blueberries. I stopped buying juice. I drink water. I stopped ordering dessert when I go out. Next is going to be, today I got rid of bread. Next is going to be pasta. But I said all to say, I'm gonna title this episode "Midlife Crisis" because that's what I feel like I'm going through, a midlife crisis. And sometimes we go through life crises, and you don't have to be 50. You could be 24 and question your life. That just means that you're aware of your surroundings. You're aware of your spirituality. You're aware of your emotions. Yeah, that's just. I'll make sure I covered everything I had to cover. I just wanted to play catch up with y'all. And my next episode wanted to be to talk to some of my friends, or if not, Also, I'm writing. I've been doing a lot of reading. That's why I've been away. And in order to be a good writer, you have to read a lot. I'm reading 3 books at a time on 3 different things. So yeah, if y'all really want to break generational curses, please do the work. A lot of generational curses aren't situational. It's biology. We have trauma in our bodies, right? We got to get rid of that trauma. Breaking a generational curse and healing trauma is not like a game of spades. Once you get that 500, you win and you get bragging rights. That's not how none of this works. It's constant work. Because until you have worked through the triggers, you will always have trauma. Something is going to trigger that trauma. So you have to figure out what the triggers are and then deal with the trauma. Therapy. Don't forget therapy, y'all. Therapy. Therapy, therapy, therapy. And going back, go back over your family history. That's really, really detrimental. I thought a lot of times I was sad from grief. When I realized, I think I spoke about it again in my book. If you haven't grabbed it, Sugar My Grits, Grief to Gratitude Through Grace. I think depression is a chemical imbalance that is passed on through generations. And so I want to make sure that my son is a happy child and I'm having conversations with him in case that gene somewhere develops in his brain that we can work through it. You know? So yeah, midlife crisis. Turning. Who are you? That's just one to ponder. My name is Amanda Calendar. This has been the More Sugar Podcast. And thank you so much for listening to my catch up, my rant. Hopefully I'm gonna try to be more consistent. I can't promise when the next record. Yes, I will. You know what? If I promise you that I'll be back next week, then I'll be back next week. Until then, stay true to yourself. Don't let all the smoke and mirrors in this social media make you think or feel you're something you're not. Stop watching other people's lives. And let's be honest. I would love to see more honesty on social media. I'll be tired of being the only one telling the truth all the time, y'all. I love y'all. Thank you for listening. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, peace.